You just wake up and then your heart is just pumping. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, so those moments are crazy.
Hey everybody, welcome to D&D Sports, where I am going a little bit solo today to do a little bit of Napoli. If you caught the morning stream, we had a race in Bahrain where you got to see Dave and German Dave with, Max Verstappen absolutely dominating once again. So, I hate to say it for you F1 schmobs, but looks like Max Verstappen might dominate this one again, unfortunately. But just absolutely killed it, man, after 23 laps. But on that note, if you want to see the recap of that, you can watch the video. It's on the channel. It'll be there. It's going to be me just doing a little bit of some Napoli pre-talk, and then we'll go into the phone lines, open up the call-in show for individuals that want to call in and hop in and lollygag and do some shenanigans. But overall, I'm going to probably make this one as a little bit short and sweet, not anything too crazy, anything too long. So without further ado, I say we kick things off here. So, one of the things is this is going to be a really difficult game. I mean, Napoli coming off the back of a 6-1 win over Sassuolo, and quite actually, they start off with draws, got their coach fired essentially, and then they decided to pile it up and get some nice a big W prior to the match against Juventus. But for us, it's going to be difficult because we haven't won there in 5 years. Playing in Napoli has not been quite favorable to us. So kicking things off, we'll kind of kick things off with how Allegri has actually talked about or considered more so. Thoughts on this here. All right, so the reigning champions are only 9th, with the visitors Juve 17 points better off. I think that's a little bit of a jab there. Massimiliano Allegri is not fooled by Napoli's position in the Serie A table, as Juventus look to end their long hoodoo in the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona. Heading into Saturday's clash in Naples, the reigning champions are currently 8th, with the visitors Juve 17 points better off and pushing Inter Milan for the top spot. However, the Bianconeri have not taken 3 points away from this fixture since March of 2019. And head coach Allegri knows Francesco Calzona's men can be very, very difficult at home turf. Juventus have not won in Naples in 5 years, and it won't be easy, Allegri said at the press conference. It'll be a difficult match as they are a good team, and it is strange to see them in this position of the table, which is kind of shocking, right? Hey, what's going on, Jeff LJJ? Really shocking, right? Because I think Napoli have the record for the worst title defense in a Serie A season in a very, very long time. We all know that there is an endless challenges in Napoli. We need to limit their strengths. We need to try to be proactive when you have the ball. They're a tough match. They just won a really tough match against Sassuolo with Osimhen returning. It looks like they found their bite again. They've had their problems this year, but the quality of players has not changed. Juve have problems on their own. Your 10th win against Frosinone last week was a first victory in 5 attempts, and Allegri wants his men to come out flying out the traps in March. We've been through a difficult period. If it was not a great February, we must ensure that March is better than last month. Against Frosinone, we conceded 2 avoidable goals. We must do better when defending. Now that the most beautiful and also the most complicated period of the season begins, we must stay focused, knowing that we must pick up points as they become more difficult to grab now. With Allegri following up, saying, last year we came in 3rd. This year we came in 2nd. It'll be a good result, with Federico Chiesa and Danilo both being in contention to feature for the Juve Napoli match, while Moise Kean and Mattia Perin will be longer to recover. Allegedly, they'll be ready to go next week. With both Adrian Rabiot and McKennie having outside chances of being involved as well. It may not be doom and gloom for Napoli when it comes to Jens Caiste and Sergio Nonge, our injury doubts, as they ran riot 2-1, 6-1 against Sassuolo last weekend. Matteo Politano feels the appointment of Calzona as Mazzarri's replacement on February 19th could be a catalyst for a late season resurgence. The Italy midfielder told sccnapoli.it, he's giving us a lot of motivation and keeping us calm as well. Some of us have known him for years. We know how he works, and we're totally on board with his ideas. So that's some thoughts there in regards to that. Really going to be one of those interesting games, to say the least. Just more so because we have a duck when it comes to Napoli. Napoli, for some reason, it's been 5 years. We're not favorable in that area at all. Sometimes we've been able to focus and get a point out of there, but the last time we were there, we lost 5-1, and not that many people are really thrilled about that. So, looking at the projected lineups brought to you by Font Mob here, it's going to be the 4-3-3 for Napoli, Juventus with the 3-5-2, Gatti, Bremer, Rugani in the back, Weah, Cambiaso, Locatelli, and Charlie might get the ironic nod to start here against them as well, where you have Kostic as the left wing back, and then Yildiz and Dusan Vlahovic are your main starters. In comparison, you have Oliveira, you have Juan Jesus, who surprisingly still plays football, and then you have Rahmani and Di Lorenzo that round out your back four, with your middle of the pitch of Zielinski, Lobotka, and Anguinacina as your mid three, and then your top three or your forwards are going to be Crava, Osimhen, and Politano, obviously with Calzona as their new coach. This Napoli is kind of a wild card because you're not really sure what you're going to get from them. LJJ says, we beat Napoli and Barca will beat them to give us a gift to De Laurentiis. And he says, we will beat them. I feel very confident. Their defense is terrible. Fair point. So looking at some of the previous results here, so the 1-0 that we won at home, them beating us at home last season to tail off in April, January the 5-1, January at home again in 2022, the 1-1 draw, and then September 11th of 2021, the 2-1 loss in the Sao Paulo. Really, most of our wins that have come from Napoli have been at home. When we've been in Naples, it's a 1-0 loss. This one was a 4-2 loss, 2-1 loss again as well here. It's not too favorable when we go there. Hopefully we can break this duck, but kind of like LJJ says, their defenses aren't the greatest, and neither are ours is the best when we're looking at it. So we can look at some match stats here, some things here. So Napoli is ranked 6th in goals scored per match at 1.5 goals, and they have not kept a clean sheet in over 6 matches. So just kind of like LJJ says, defensively, they're quite leaky. There's a potential way that you can break through it, but you'll have to break through it. Unfortunately for us, our defense is not in the best shape in regards to getting ready for that as well either. I mean, defensively, we have been atrocious in February. Napoli and Juventus have not drawn in any of their last 3 matches against each other, so there's always going to be a clear-cut 3-pointer. LJJ says, YouTube kicked me out. Oh, that's not good. And then Juve ranked 5th in goals scored per match at 1.5 or 1.6. So Napoli and Juve offensively are quite similar with each other. Juve is 2nd as far as away from home this season. So the record away from home has been awesome. Kostic ranked 3rd in big chances created with 10 in the competition, which corner kick galore. So bringing in some other interesting things here that this is courtesy of the Juventus website. So some opposition focus. So we're going to have some fun here. So we're going to react to 10 things to know about Napoli, brought to you by the Juventus website. Juventus travel to Napoli this weekend, taking on the reigning Serie A champions Napoli at the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium on Sunday. After 3 draws in a row, Napoli have earned a 6-1 midweek win over Sassuolo and yet still sit 9th in the table, 17 points behind the Bianconeri, who beat them 1-0 at the Allianz earlier this season thanks to Federico Gatti's goal. Ahead of Sunday's matchup, here are 10 things to know about Napoli. 1. Napoli have won the last 4 home matches against Juventus in the league, yet they have never achieved 5 home wins in a row against the Bianconeri in their Serie A history. So there is a chance, according to the stats. There have been one draw in the last 10 matches between Juve and Napoli at home of the Neapolitans in Serie A, with 6 victories for the home side and 3 wins for the visiting team. The Partenope have also earned 18 in 12 matches at the Maradona this season. Since their return to Serie A in 2007-2008, they've only once collected fewer points at this point from home season games, which is in 1920, which was the Gattuso. No, it was not the Gattuso. It was the Ancelotti before he got sacked. After the 6-1 victory over Sassuolo, Napoli could win 2 games in a row in the league for the first time since September, which was against Udinese and Lecce. So that's actually quite interesting that Napoli have not won 2 games in a row for a very long time. So it kind of shows that how shaky they are. Number 5. The home side have recorded just 1 clean sheet in their last 11 league games at the Maradona, 0-0 against Monza on the 29th of December, after keeping 6 clean sheets in the previous 10 Serie A home games. Napoli is the Serie A team that has earned the most points after being behind this season at 15. Victor Osimhen is the 3rd player in the history of Napoli to reach double-digit figures in goals for 4 consecutive seasons in Serie A, after Maradona himself between 84-85 and 87-88. And I believe this is Attila Salustro from 29-30 to 32-33. Holy smokes. The Nigerian has scored in 3 matches in a row for Napoli in all competitions for the first time since this period of May and August, which was back then, 4 matches in case. Crava took part in 3 goals in his only match against Juventus at home in the league. 1 goal, 2 assists on the 13th of January, 2023. Only against Sassuolo 4 has the Georgian been involved in more goals in home fixtures in the Italian top flight. Giovanni Simeone has scored 6 goals against Juventus in Serie A, including 2 braces in 27-11-16 with Genoa and October 30th with Verona. Only against Lazio did he hit the target more times in the competition. And since his first goal in the Bianconeri, no player scored more goals than Giovanni Simeone against Juventus. The only player that has done so is Duvan Zapata at 6. So those are your 10 facts in regards to this match. So the interesting thing about this, we'll kind of go, and I'll open up the tactical board here so we can kind of take a peek here. Or before we go there, I'm going to go to Sportskeeda here. So we do have some potential betting tips and suggestions here. I know, Frankie, you haven't seen yours yet, but I pulled this up just kind of quickly here. So we'll scroll down here. So a couple of Serie A matches to unfold this weekend. So the Juve Napoli preview, 3-2 victory. So they edged Frosinone 3-2 here as they're recapping this. So some head-to-head, some key numbers as well for you bettors out there is that Juve have had an impressive historical record against Napoli and have won 87 out of 188 between the two. Juventus reverse fixture, they won by a 1-0 scoreline. The last 2 matches between Napoli and Juventus, we have witnessed 5 victories apiece between the 2 teams and 1 draw. Napoli have won each of their last 4 matches at home against Juventus in Serie A, so that is a record that Juve are trying to beat that duck. And then Napoli won their previous game against Sassuolo at 6-1. So let's see what Sportskeeda says here. Juventus have marked improvement under Allegri this season, but remain well behind Inter in the title race. Napoli have an impressive squad at their disposal and have shown glimpses of greatness, but not really getting through the line. So, Sportskeedia's recommendations. Tip 1, result, Juve to win. Tip 2, game to have over 2.5 goals. Nope. Tip 3, Juventus to keep a clean sheet. They're saying yes. Tip 4, Dusan Vlahovic to score. Those are going to be some quick share bets there. And then we'll move on to the tactical board. And once we hit that point, I'll drop the line for you guys to hop in. So looking at what we've got projected here, so it is with Locatelli being out, we're obviously going to adjust this. Or no, Locatelli's not out, I'm sorry. With Rabiot and McKennie both being out, we'll make some quick adjustments here. So we'll throw Weah as your right wing back. We'll throw Loca out, or not him. I keep saying Rabiot is Loca. So Charlie's going to be there. Throw Weah here. Chiesa, you're out. Dusan there. So we'll set this up here. I'll catch up on the chats here. So Frankie coming in with the eye emojis. We got Komika saying, "Hey guys," or "Hey guy." Jeff says, "What do you mean you got kicked out?" And then Komika says, "Yo jefe." So Kamiyasu is going to cover in here in the midfield. We'll throw Kostic out here. And then I got to get a Rugani. I've never created a Rugani. Gosh, that just shows how terrible I am for Walgani here. So we'll slap in Rugani there. Throw Bremer here. Gatti there. Bam. All right, so for the Neapolitans, I should probably do the blue, right? Just to make it fair, instead of just having white chips over here. Oops. So we'll line up in the 3-5-2. They're going to line up in the 4-3-3. So for them, what they're going to try to do tactically is they're going to be looking to really go in and get some space out here. So we've got Di Lorenzo, we've got Rahmani here, we've got Juan, Jesus. I'm not really too familiar with their wing back or their left back. And then we have their midfield three. All right. And then I'll put Osimhen up here. I'll put Crava as the 10 there. And then Politano here. So looking at this from a tactical perspective, I think the one thing that you're going to need to be careful for is, so Osimhen is going to try to occupy Bremer at all times. And then Crava and Gatti are going to be stuck with glue here. And then we'll have Politano really trying to occupy the space behind Kostic and Rugani. And when we look, I should probably type the names, huh? And then I think Politano is what, number 20? If I'm not mistaken here. Yes, 21. All right, so then you've got that, and then your midfield three of Lobotka, who is 68. So Lobotka is going to try to essentially neutralize Locatelli here, and then on the right, I think it's Agua Nasina. I don't have his number memorized, so just bear with me. 99. Oh, I totally spelled that incorrectly. Ha. All right, Zelensky over here at 20. All right, so kind of looking here from a man-per-man perspective, how they're going to try to occupy. So Politano is going to try to really get this space in between Kostic and Rugani. And then you've got Englesina there. That's going to be trying to occupy the space in between Charlie and Kostic here. That's going to do some setup. Napoli is really going to try to focus on getting 1v1s with your center backs. If Napoli is able to get 1v1s with your center backs like this, Napoli is going to have a field day. I think Osimhen and Bremer will cancel each other out as far as the defensive capabilities there, but I do think that Crava does have an edge over Gatti. And then the concerning thing here is that you have Weah instead of McKennie, because if it was with McKennie, it's a little bit of a different conversation, right? Because McKennie would slot in and essentially overlap and cover any movement there. But with Cambiasso here, Cambiasso and Weah are going to try to do their chemical reaction to really start pushing the ball forward. But that also opens, again, Zelensky. You got to be careful where Zelensky is on the field. And then obviously Dusan to press on Juan or Rahmani and Yildiz to find the space in between. The main thing that you want to do against this Napoli side is you're going to want to really counterattack. This game is going to be essentially dependent on how Locatelli can facilitate play. Because with how Napoli press, right? So they press and they play wide. So Napoli like to really expose the width of the field here. And then, okay, you posted your parlays. I'll read your parlays when I get a moment. So when we look at it here, right? So in a full offensive thread, you'll have Napoli. They'll push like this essentially when they're really going for it. So when it works like this, so when you're stuck here offensively, so your players are going to be pressed a little bit deeper. Charlie will try to occupy here. Kostic will be deep here. Di Lorenzo will generally be open. Locatelli will be with Lobotka here. Dusan or Yildiz will alternate. So I would assume Dusan would be here. Yildiz would be a little bit here. Cambiaso will be deep here to cover Weah, and then we'll be like this. So when you're in this set, and this is how Juve is going to play, right? Juve is going to sit back and absorb pressure. There's no way in hell Juve is going to Napoli to really be aggressive and really push the ball forward. So your main factor is going to be Locatelli right here. The reason is when Juve are able to regain possession, you will need two things. You need Kostic to open up wide in some space, and you need Weah to start running as fast as he can. Because if Loca has the accuracy, if Loca is able to expose these areas here in transition, you can have some opportunities against this Napoli side at home. So your main focus, if I'm Juventus with Allegri, is you're going to have to attack this area here. This is going to be the real key to success because you want to catch Di Lorenzo and you want to catch Oliveira out of position. Because if you're able to do that, you're able to do a quick counterattack and it opens you up. Because Napoli aren't known for having a great defense this season. Their defense hasn't been great, even though they have Juan over here, who I'm surprised who still plays football. But again, that goes to show they never replaced Kim properly. Because, for example, Rahmani is going to be stuck on Dusan the entirety of the game. So Dusan's going to have to focus on being able to get some separation, some space before he goes into it and before he really is able to create anything out of it. And I do think Yildiz has an edge over Juan in terms of speed, but Yildiz has to use his speed and his agility. So normally in a counterattacking play, you take the ball, Locatelli finds the ball into space, which Kostic is able to go here. Charlie would then transition from the back end. Charlie would probably, and I'm assuming if I'm reading Allegri's mind here, Charlie is going to occupy this place. So I'm going to just put a big C here. And then Cambiaso is going to overlap with Weah. So Cambiaso and Weah are going to be responsible. So C plus W. Oops. So Cambiaso and Weah are going to both occupy this side. So you're going to see some interchange play between Cambiaso and Weah. So there might be some plays where Weah is going to be in the middle, and then there's going to be other plays where Cambiaso is going to be out there. So in theory, you want to sit back, hold the pressure, maintain the pressure that Napoli is bringing onto you, and then you need to hit them fast because Crava and Oliveira like to overlap with each other here on the width. Same thing with Di Lorenzo and Politano. They essentially let me get rid of these so we can see better. So from a tactical perspective, how Napoli attack, Napoli like to interchange between their right back and their wingers. So what that means is there's going to be a lot of 1-2 actions between the two. So like, for example, it'll be, so we'll delete this here and then we'll demonstrate it with Oliveira. So Oliveira has the ball. So Oliveira plays the ball to Crava here, and then Crava returns the ball into space there. If if he has too many players in the middle, generally with Crava, you'll have two options, right? So Oliveira will make the run here to try to pull Gatti to cover and then open up space for him to take a fake and shoot. Generally, that's what you would want to do. So the idea is you would need either Cambiaso or Locatelli to shut this area down defensively. Same thing goes for Di Lorenzo and Politano. You'll have a little bit of a give and go between Di Lorenzo and Politano. Similar idea, run out wide, force a cross in. Because with Osimhen is essentially responsible for this entire zone, defensive or offensively. So with Osimhen being able to win the ball there, you're going to have some challenges per se. But overall, I think if Locatelli is good in transition, Cambiaso is able to move the ball with Loca, I think there's going to be some opportunities there for Juve. So before I do an entire information dump, I'm going to slap the link out there. If anyone wants to hop in and have a conversation, we can talk anything, the game, your thoughts on the game, or even wrestling, because The Rock absolutely did some crazy stuff. I won't be able to answer too much about the Formula One stuff just because I was working and I didn't get to see most of the race, and I'm sure you guys have seen it with German Dave and Canadian Dave. So you get to see it with those guys. But yeah, hop in. The lines are open if you guys want to talk some Juve Napoli, or if you guys want to talk some wrestling, I'm fine with. But going on again here, looking at it from an offensive standpoint here, I really think that this game is going to be defined by crosses that Juve provide as well. Because when we force these guys deep, we're going to have Dusan up here. You'll have Yildiz in this area here. Cambiaso will be occupying this space here. Charlie. So the idea is you want Lobotka to focus in on Yildiz so you can allow Locatelli to really facilitate the ball. And you'll have Zielinski covering this area here to try to isolate Cambiaso and Weah here, because you're going to need two players to effectively guard Cambiaso and Weah properly here. And then you'll have Crava that'll be, here's the out ball to open up for a counterattack. Gatti will probably be holding this zone here. Oisiman will be the further point up. Di Lorenzo will be trying to cover and contain Kostic. Politano as well. Rugani will be here. Generally, you'll see Bremer occupy this area here. So this is going to be one of those games where you're really going to see Locatelli's capabilities. So with Locatelli being that regista, or being able to move the ball here, I'm going to anticipate there's going to be a lot of connections between Charlie and Loca, and then Cambiaso and Loca. So the ball movement's going to be here. The idea is we're going to have to attack the wings and then be able to slot that ball in, and Dusan's going to be able to create some separation on there. Outside of that, I think that's going to be it. It's just going to be a simple, disciplined game. You got to be careful. Playing in Napoli is extremely difficult, but it's not impossible. I think the proper way to phrase it, am I optimistic? Yes. Am I expecting the greatest results or anything like that? I'm a little bit in the water, right? I'm a little bit hit or miss on it. But let's see. I think we've got the first prediction that we have on Discord from KB, which was a 2-1 prediction with Bremer and Vlahovic scoring. So Frankie got me 2 parlays, so I'll read Frankie's 2 parlays. So Frankie has 2 fouls drawn on Crava, so he has the over on the 2 fouls drawn. And then Manuel Locatelli, he's got 1.5 tackles. He took the over on it. So if you're a bettor and you're looking for some ideas here, then you have Dusan Vlahovic, 3 shots. Frankie has taken the over on the 3 shots. And then for Matteo Politano, half a shot on target. He is taking the over. So Frankie is recommending to take the over on everything. So his explanation here, Crava will be a foul merchant, and going against Gatti, more than likely he will draw fouls, with Loca being the main midfield, hold it down and get most of the tackles. While for Dusan, I believe he'll continue his streak of insane numbers of shots, especially against this Napoli defense, and Politano is almost always a threat against Juve, and I have 1 shot on target from him. All right. Juve Chris saying just came on. I'd rather see Cambiaso on the left instead of Kostic. I'm not having McKennie and Rabiot ruins that chance. Kostic brings nothing, so why not try something else in this situation? Which is a very good point, right? The idea is like, why not give it a go? I think there's a couple of factors in play here, right? Because it is a game in Naples, and one of the concerns is whether or not we got a win against Frosinone, but it was a shaky win, right? It was, last minute heave where Rugani shoots it and it goes through the keeper's legs. So even though we won against Frosinone, I still think that they still feel a little bit shaky on there, and I think they're just kind of going for it from a security blanket perspective. Because the concern, I think, right now, and the reason why he's playing Cambiaso in the middle of the pitch is because if you look at your alternatives that you have right now, you have Moretti and you have Hans Nicolucci, which when you're looking at this Napoli midfield is a lot more, it's a physical and it's an aggressive midfield. So when one of them gets bossed around, you have essentially neutralized one of the midfield players in the game, because we'll go back to the board here, but when we're looking at it with what personnel that they have, they'll have, whoops, wrong tab. There we go. Bam. All right, so looking at it here, right? So Lobotka or Zielinski or Aguinacina, they would manhandle Meretti or Hans Nicolucci quite easily. Look, am I a fan of Kostic being on the left? Look, I'm not Kostic's greatest supporter here, but his contributions on corner kicks, the one time we score on set pieces if he's supplying a corner kick. So I guess that's probably the logic here. This is going to be a very, very slow / terror ball-esque match, right? It's just very, very difficult, right? Because every time we've gone to Napoli, even with our super teams, it's always been a 1-0 result. If we've been able to win in Napoli, it's been, a 1-0 or a 2-1 or something that we barely edge out because we terror ball the hell out of them. It's just playing in Napoli is it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And a lot of it's just not there really, right? For us, it's just like when we're playing in Verona, like it's just I don't know, it's one of those like taboo stadiums, same like Genoa, where we just always tend to struggle there. But also, speaking of some fun Napoli stuff, while I let Jeff in, I'm gonna pull this article up real quick. Hey, buddy, what's up?
Not much, bro. Just been busy working the usual. Just listening to the news every day, and then just trying to make up this prediction, this Napoli Juve game.
I gotcha. Anything that really perturbs your mind?
I'm not really. It's like I'm not necessarily scared of Napoli. I'm more terrified of my guys. It's really just a mindset game. That's really what I think. It's a whole different ball game where like it's just a mindset. If they're ready to play, I believe they can win. But if they're not ready to play, then it might bite them in the ass.
Yeah, and that's for me, right? Like that's where I'm a little bit concerned on my end. I'm not really afraid of the Napoli team. I just think the one thing that really concerns me more so is just are they going to be leaky or are they not going to be leaky? Because for the month of February, our defense has not been the greatest.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really what I'm the most concerned about is the back three. I mean, it was kind of crazy when you think about it because last year in the last half of the season or for this season, pretty much what I'm saying is that the defense was really solidified. We were talking about how good Rugani, Bremer, and Gatti wasn't making as many mistakes. He was making mistakes, but not as much. And then they made a complete 180 in February, which was a little bit shocking.
Yeah. This one news that was really funny. Apparently Napoli lawyers are trying to sue to get UEFA to get Juventus out of the Club World Cup in the summer.
You know what I think about ADL? I don't know. You know this just as well as I do. I mean, you listen to Eminem, right?
Yep.
This kind of reminds me of a Benzino M beef. Like like ADL's Benzino. Like he's just freaking petty, bro. Like I don't get it with this guy. Like I don't know like what is going on. Why do you hate us that much? Like I understand we're the best in Italy. Like we've won everything, but bro, like that far, lawyers.
That's why you can't lose. That's why I don't want to lose this game because I don't want to give this guy the ammunition. Because, like, for example, if Napoli beat us tomorrow, they will make a documentary for this for the next decade where they'll be like, even our crappiest season, we still beat Juve.
Well, I don't think they need us. They already have plenty of ammunition from winning the league last year and then from IFTV saying that they were one of the best teams of all time. Whatever they said, whatever nonsense they were saying, because that made no sense.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about like just I thought like I saw the article, someone shared it in Discord, and I just kind of chuckled and I was just like, all right, cool, I guess. I mean, if whatever helps you sleep at night, if you want to sue to try to get yourself into the Club World Cup, I mean, you can get in by just beating Barcelona. Like, save yourself the legal trouble.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was like the thing is like with the Barcelona thing. I just the thing is that they just don't have the confidence. That's it. Napoli doesn't have the confidence. If you're acting like this, clearly like Napoli just does not have one bit of confidence whatsoever. Like, you're scared. By doing this, you're telling us you're scared.
For sure. And I think that's one of those things where one of the other concerns that I have is because Calzone is a new coach right off rip. So it's like they might have, like, kind of like how Roma have De Rossi, that De Rossi boost right now, where they're just, they'll play a lot of really good games and then they'll lose and et cetera and whatnot. But that's my only question mark that I have, is I don't know how it is, right? If it was Walter there, I would say, okay, Napoli's going to try to play defensive and we'll be able to have some fun and get into it. But they're not. So they've switched back to that 4-3-3 where they were originally, transitioning to a 3-5-2. So I don't know. I'm a little bit confused on how they're going to line up or play, because it's their third coach this season. But at the same time, they could have a ridiculous just boost in morale because of, a defensive coach isn't being there anymore.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, okay, by that saying though, Napoli, if Napoli's going to come in and attack, just going to attack and attack and attack, they do have Victor Osimhen, and he is fairly dangerous. I think with that coming through, I think the performance of Gleison Bremer is going to determine a lot of factors. Like, if he is able to lock Osimhen down perfectly, I think we will have a good chance of maybe winning, and then also locking down Kvara. Also, these two players, if you can lock these guys up and then let them try to attack and we go for the counter, we're going to have a pretty solid chance.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, and I think this game is going to be very, very crucial on how Locatelli plays this game. I think Locatelli is going to be crucial to your transitional ball play. And, he needs to be able to move that ball to the wings as fast as physically possible.
That has been our weakness in February. I've noticed this. I've noticed how slow we are on the transition. That part, I've seen it. I've been watching it for the whole month. It's like, as soon as we get the ball, it's like we don't know what the hell we're doing with the ball. We don't know where to pass it to. And that part is going to be that's got to improve immediately, especially if you're going to play defensively. If we're going to play the counter-attacking game, we have to go fast on the transition from offense to defense and defense to offense. Because I noticed that our players are very unsure of what to do, and then we become one-dimensional. You pass it to Kostic, and then he crosses it, and it's the same thing over and over and over again.
It is, right? 100%. And this is where, it's not just a tactical thing. It's not a coaching thing. It's also the players. They have to be able to move and understand where the ball is being moved in and adjusted, right? Because that's really what's going to keep us, essentially, right? Where if we can't transition the ball, we can't attack, because we don't have the capability to make 1-2 moves and then just be able to dribble through a team like that. It's just physically not possible for this current Juve roster. This Juve roster likes to attack in space and force off odd man rushes to really get their opportunities or set pieces. So with that being said, really, really going to be important on how we move the ball on the side.
I'm also going to add one extra caveat is Charlie. I think his performance is going to matter too. I like a little bit. I like how his performance is on the offensive flank. He might be able to add an extra flair where he can create chances, like something out of nothing. He could do something out of that. He's a bit physical. I don't think he's super defensive, but he might be able to do something, like do some effect. And then hopefully I would assume Kenan Yildiz can hit a punch, like pack a punch and help out Dusan, because Dusan's been really, really good these past few months, and hopefully he can materialize from here on to the end of the season. So we'll see. I'll see how this goes. And Temi Weah.
Hold on, you want to repeat that because you cut out?
Oh no, I was gonna say, simply put, Yildiz and Temi Weah need to step up. And for Kostic, I don't really want too much out of him than just to be solidifying the defense, because that's kind of our Achilles heel. I understand that now.
Yeah, I think we need to work on right now. I mean, to be honest with you, this game, the right side of the field is our right side, Napoli's left side, is going to be one of the more difficult / more challenging areas, right? Because Crava is always going to be difficult to deal with, right? He always, merits 2 or 3 guys on him at all times. I don't know, like Politano is always a wild card per se, so I'm not too worried about it. But right now with Osimhen coming in and just being on form, and I thought he played decent for Nigeria as well, so I think he's starting to get a little bit warm. But it's more so the confidence aspect of it, right? Because Frosinone marched down our field twice and scored on us, and I'm hoping that they can shake that per se.
Well, I hope they wake up. That's it. It's like you got to wake up. It's like, okay, dude. Like, I think what happened was in January we flirted too much with complacency. Like we were just complacent.
And that's a fair assessment, right? Because we were all partying, we're all goofing around here, and then all of a sudden it's just like the Napoli game hit, and we're like, shit.
Allegri was talking shit like the whole time. Like we're the cops, they're the robbers. They're Djokovic, we're Sinner, and then like February, the Empoli match just like went downhill. Like it kind of sucks because like I'm taking the heat for a lot of things because I was talking mad crap. Like I was giving into all the Inter fans like a big problem, and they were kind of feeling it until the Empoli match, and then the Inter match, and then this whatever you call it, the San Siro. Yeah, we took a hit, a massive hit.
Yeah, and this is one of the first times in a really long time that I've ever seen Allegri talk smack too. Like that's the one thing too that I honestly wasn't expecting it, right? Because like even back then, like I think the only person that was really like, we need to talk smack was Colin, right? And we're all just kind of like, yeah, we'll just kind of do our own thing. And then, yeah, like totally different now. And then it just I think the question is for you guys, and we'll catch up with some of your chats as well. Colin, line is there if you want to hop into. Like, are we just like, because there's not really much activity on the internet for Juve right now. Is just everybody kind of deflated from February? Like, is everyone just kind of like burnt out from it?
Yeah, well, I'm burnt out for sure. Like, I have to argue every time. I have to defend Max Allegri because now you have the Allegri out people just losing their minds. I think there was an Allegri out after the Inter loss, and they were having it in Times Squares, and that's how you know, like, Allegri hysteria is real.
Allegri derangement.
Allegri deranged syndrome, kind of like that aspect. Like they're losing their minds, bro. They're like, I don't know what to say. And I said it. The whole Allegri thing, they've hated him since the moment he stepped to Juve in 2014 of July when Conte left. I remember that.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So LJJ says, is just beating Barcelona and they're in? More than likely, I think because they drew against Barcelona the first time. If they get a win, I think they have to win one more, and then they're officially locked in. That'll lock them in. I think they need 2 wins per se. But if they're to get through that, that's kind of what'll be the main factor.
What is your take on the Barca Napoli game?
I think Barcelona should win. They're at home.
I think on paper they should be a semifinalist, in my opinion. But again, in theory, in reality, it's just that back four. Even on paper, I would have said Bayern Munich would have made it to the semifinals. But like the thing is, the problem with Barcelona is that defense, that back four is not convincing.
Yeah,
field as well. So that's.
They don't play good, right? Barcelona just plays really sloppy. And in theory, right, in Spain, Barcelona should win. The concern now is again with Napoli getting the new coach, essentially the new transitional coach or the interim coach. Do they have that it's like a perk almost, like special coach powers or new coach powers as a perk?
It's a morale boost. That's what it is. It's kind of like, oh God, it's a fresh start, new beginning. It happens a lot of times. Chelsea does this effectively, where they fire their coach in December, they hire a coach in January, and they've won the Champions League twice that way. Where it happened with Di Matteo in 2012, and then with Tuchel when they beat Man City. So it's like it's like a nice little morale booster. Like, okay, on to like let's just play harder now. And plus, jobs are on the line, positions are on the line, so you have to play extra harder when you got a newer coach. So there's always that factor.
No, for sure. And look, again, for us, I hope that Barcelona win just to knock them out of there. And I want to see them actually waste money to try to sue the FIFA Club World Cup just to get in. But, hey, teach their own. KB saying, rely too much on Kostic and Juve become one-dimensional. LJJ says, I think Dusan will be good with Yildiz. LJJ says, Bremer was so bad that game at 5-1. Now I believe he will stop Osimhen.
He did it last game.
Yeah, he did the last two, actually.
Yeah, no, he did fine. I mean, it happens, especially in the last season when we lost that 5-1 game. That week itself was a shit show. Like, they lost 15 points, and then they get beaten 5-1. I mean, it was a relatively good Napoli side, but last year was just an outlier for me. Like, it was hard.
KB says, I am more underwhelmed by the terrible month that Juve had. It seems like that, right? I mean, like, everybody's been kind of like quiet per se all over the interwebs. Like, there hasn't been too much going on or anything like that. I think a lot of people are just kind of like, ugh, I'm pooped. I'm exhausted.
I mean, literally, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, it's just it made me poke my eyes out. It was really shit. It happens. Every team has it. Now, unfortunately, Inter hasn't had that one yet. Like, they've had almost games where they've almost lost or they've tied, but like they haven't had a run where they're doing really bad. So it sucks, but it happens to every team. It happens to Milan. Like, Milan has those bipolar performances where they perform really well at one point, and then everybody just tells them they're the best team. Pioli's a great coach, and then they just dip down. Yeah. It happens. And on top of that, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Our players are either not, like, our good players are not in form. Then we don't have any like good quality players like a Milik and a Sandro. And then the other factor is their inexperience. Like, Yildiz is a good prospect, but he's not experienced enough to perform at his top peak level yet. So it's going to take time.
For sure. Mm-hmm. LJJ said he wanted to also add that we were docked 15 points there too. Chris coming in saying, I am checked out. I never expected to win the Scudetto, but the issues with this team went through were typical Allegri issues, and we still have this guy on the bench. So I am more emotionally drained. LJJ says, I can't stand the people against Allegri. I think we will do better if we change coach. I'm confused. I'm confused with this because it says I can't stand the people against him. I think they think we'll do better if we change the coach.
Yeah.
It's a I've always argued this, right? It's a multifaceted issue. Mm-hmm. Like, there isn't a one or the other, right? For me, it's a little bit of both. Like, and to put this into perspective, the third thing is the board. The reason why this season as well, it is very, very difficult for me to really start like blaming individuals or things for issues or shortcomings this year, because if you hear me out from this perspective, the board has not found the proper adequate replacements for Fagioli and Pogba in the midfield. Charlie is not it. Keep it a buck with you. Charlie is not it. Hans Nicolucci is not it. Moretti is not it, because Fagioli and Pogba, especially Pogba, right? Pogba's a world-class athlete. Was. Because I'm pretty sure his career is over now with that 4-year ban. Those two positions were never adequately dealt with or replaced. And the problem is there is nobody on this roster that can transition the ball out of the defense to the offense than Paul Pogba. You don't have that, so your transitional play is dead. The board, unfortunately, didn't realize that was a need, because obviously going into the season, Pogba was there. Should they have, gotten a midfielder in January? Probably. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe there was financial issues. That's one thing that's on the board. The next thing is on the players. Some of these players are very, very streaky and not consistent. Some of these guys need to figure their shit out and be consistent. Like Dusan, I was railing on him at the beginning of the season. He turned his shit around and there you go. I'm not railing on him anymore. There are some players that need to understand that the situation is currently at hand. I don't like players that sit there and say, I can't do my job if I am not playing in my position. You're a professional athlete. You are being paid millions of dollars to do what you do. So to keep it fair, so to keep it a buck, you might have to make some tweaks and adjustments, because there's not been a player that has gone from the youth system all the way to the pro system that have played at the same position. They've always thrown you in multiple positions. I don't like that argument. Some of these players need to adjust and they need to adapt and get their skills better. That's one thing on the players. The next thing, so this is what's on Allegri. This is what Allegri's fault is. Some of these games, it looks like Allegri isn't preparing the roster correctly. Some of his starting lineups, some of his substitutions don't really make sense. And that's what's on Allegri, right? To keep it fair. Because I'm going across all of it. Because if you want to tell me Allegri out and say, oh, it's because, certain players are making bonehead decisions, Allegri out, because we don't have a proper midfield, Allegri out, I can't have a constructive conversation with you. I can understand, like, for example, I'm not expecting everyone to like him. That's not what I'm trying to debate here. What I'm trying to stipulate is that there are things that he's doing wrong as well, and then there's other things that are going wrong that are against that are not in his control. Because, like, for example, I don't see Locatelli being the true option as a ball-playing midfielder, essentially as your transitional playing midfielder. You need someone to fill that role. I brought the idea of Jorginho because I think there is no one right now that you can afford, because he is going to be free. I don't think there is a proper regista out there, unlike Jorginho, who is able to facilitate the ball sideways and through the middle, that has the experience, because you need an experienced guy. Because, like, for example, I understand people can say, what about Berenachea? Berenachea has had only one season in Frosinone. And he is not essentially the guy that you want to give the keys to the franchise to, in theory, right? Because it's like, think about it. You put in any sport, you want to get an old veteran guy while your younger guy builds himself out. Because that's why I'm a little bit, preen away from the whole Berenachea thing. Because Berenachea is being projected to go on loan again. They're saying that he's going to loan on Genoa next season. So, look, I like Berenachea, but I don't think Berenachea is the main guy right now. You need a seasoned veteran that can anticipate passing lanes.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, no. Give him some time to develop. Give him time. He needs time still. Like, good job at Frosinone, but he needs a lot of time. And on top of that, I like Jorginho. I like the idea of having Jorginho. I'm not saying he's going to be the main guy, Lord and Savior, but I just think that the little piece that we need, just like somebody that can facilitate the ball would be great. I would love that.
He's 32 years old. If you're able to pick him up for a 3-year contract at his age, I think you're fine. I really do. I think you're fine, because you need someone that's able to play the ball through the middle, adjust through the middle, that's playing that deep lying midfielder. If Juventus want to continue with Allegri, you need a Jorginho. Hell, even if you were to bring in Motta, you need a very good regista for both systems to work because of how pragmatic they are.
Well, I think, what do you think is going to happen in the summer transfer market if we're focusing on it? So if we need a proper regista, I would say also a proper fullback, at least one fullback. I think Cambiaso can play on the other side. And also another thing, the Cope Miners and Samarsic, what's going on that? Because I haven't heard as much about it.
So they want Cope Miners now with Pogba being gone. Apparently they're going to allocate funds to Cope Miners, which I'm fine with it, right? He's a proven guy. The only thing is again, most of the Atalanta players, when they leave Atalanta, they're not really as great as they are at Atalanta. So that's going to be one of the concerns there, because Atalanta are going to want a pretty penny for Cope Miners, because they don't have to sell him, and they don't need to sell him, and they don't want to sell him. So you're going to have to break the bank to get him, in a sense. Samardic, it's more so what happens with Charlie, right? Like, for example, if Charlie gets a negotiated deal, a restructured deal, and it's a little bit cheaper, they might stick with Charlie, but they might also get Lazar as well. Who knows, right? I really think, because with all due respect to Fagioli, I don't think Fagioli is going to be 100% the main guy. I still think you need another incisive ball playing midfielder. You just have to have it. But catching up with some of these comments here. So Chris says, it's not that we'll do better in regards to Allegri, but it's the risk that the club needs to take to see success. We don't have great players, but we also don't have a great coach. Easier to get rid of one coach than multiple players. And then to follow up, he says, also don't resign players that are mediocre after one good season. Change Allegri first, let contracts expire, and bring in a new coach with a different vision. The question is, so like, for example, the argument, and this is a fair argument, right? But the biggest concern from the Juve board perspective, are they willing to finish outside the top four? That's going to be the main question of the board. For me, like, hey, if we're able to, if we go 5th or 6th for 2 years in a row with, De Zerbi or Motta, and then we become unstoppable later, sure, F it, why not, right? But the board in itself, or Juve in itself, are going to say, okay, if we get this coach, are we willing to go below? Because that's one of the reasons why Pirlo got fired, was because they're like, he barely edged out a top 4, and I don't want to ride this roller coaster again. So that's why he got canned. Sarri got canned because the locker room lost him. But that's one of the issues that you run with Juventus. And it's the same thing with Real Madrid as well. Because, like, for example, they took a chance on Rafa Benitez in 16-17, and then the second Rafa Benitez took him out of the top 4, they fired him. Real Madrid said, okay, you're done. You're out. Same thing with Lopetegui when he was at Real Madrid. There are some teams that do not want to risk an outside top 4 finish. Juve are one of those teams, unfortunately. If Juve were financially in the clear where they could fuck around and not find out, then you would see them take a chance like that. They'd be willing to take a chance like that. But right now, if Juve were to sit there and say, okay, we need a full rebuild, we need to dump this all, they would have to do 2 things. And a lot of people aren't going to like these things. To cover the financial impact of not qualifying for Europe, they would have to sell Dusan Vlahovic and Gleison Bremer. Those 2 would both have to be sold for them to be comfortable in, taking that risk. Because that's the issue, right? Where this season, somehow financially they got away with it, right? However, if they were to bring in Thiago Motta, or if they were to bring in, let me say this, because Motta's a little bit more than Palladino. Say that Juve bring in Palladino. For them to be okay with Palladino not finishing in the top 4, they would have to liquidate at least over 100 million in assets. And Juve, the way that they operate, they just don't like doing that.
They're not a club that takes risk.
No, they're not. They're willing to be pragmatic. And, it's just like Arsenal, right? Like, and I'm not comparing us to Arsenal, but Arsenal is the same way until they really said, okay, Arsenal's made enough money, or the whole Arteta project is because they have enough money to fuck around and find out. Because, Arsenal makes a boatload of money off merchandising and other shenaniganry. So, like, for us in Arsenal, it's very difficult, right? Unfortunately, it's going to be pragmatic, but Juve don't want to take that risk and finish outside the top 4. All right. LJJ says, Allegri wanted Savic from Lazio, and Juve couldn't offer to provide him 40 million euros. Which coach would they think would come and join Juve and guarantee a better job without the dollars? And you need the dollars, and Juve don't want to spend it. We don't have money, so use the kid as a regista. Again, we're in the same situation we're at right now, because if he doesn't do well, he does look promising, but he still needs some time to develop as well.
Experience. No, he needs experience still. Like, you can't have a guy that just had been good for one season. That's too reckless of a move.
All right, so Juve's main priority is winning in Italy. They haven't done that in 4 seasons now. So what is really finishing outside of the top 4 in one season? It's a financial loss of $80 million. Because, for example, them finishing the Champions League positionings this season gives them roughly about 80 to 100 million, depending on revenue and placement in the league. But them finishing outside of the top 4 is $80 million in losses. And that's not factoring in ticket sales for the Champions League, TV rights deals for the Champions League, as well as additional funds that you get from winning matches in the Champions League, the group stages, right? And then it's just not being in that competition costs you about 80 to 100 million dollars. And they took that loss this season. They took that loss. I'm not sure how they were able to recover it, to be honest with you, without selling Chiesa or Dusan, but it is a very big loss. It's 80 to 100 million dollars in losses. Just kind of like LJ, they can't afford to stay out of the Champions League. They're dependent on the marketing. Without being in the Champions League, they lose a lot of money. It sucks, but it has to happen. The rebuild is started. This is what Allegri wanted to do, right? So the rebuild should have started after losing to Madrid in 17. Allegri wanted to start a rebuild in 18, but Agnelli, Parataci, and them were like, no, we're good. We don't need to. Gampacho says, let's just get bought out by the Saudis. Chris says, in regards to player sales, this is what needs to have been done to have a proper rebuild. Absolutely, right? But if we sold Dusan and Chiesa at the beginning of the season, people would have rioted. There's no sponsor that will pay you without being in the Champions League, and sponsors will not pay you that much also as well. That's one of the biggest factors when we have in regards to this. It's going to be more so the amount of money that you lose that when you take that risk. And Juve just aren't that club that takes that kind of risk, unfortunately. If there's some teams that should, but it's just not plausible for them. And that's where, for me, I've kind of understood that's the role and that's the position that the club takes. And this rebuild might be a little bit more slow, meticulous, and draining, but unfortunately, it is what it is at this point.
I mean, it is what it is. They've kept the company for over 100 years. I mean, it tells you something. So you can't just count that for nothing. At the end of the day, I mean, yeah, I wish we could have had Kevin De Bruyne in our midfield, but you can't get it. You can't have it and you can't get it. You need the money, and if you don't have the money, you're not going to get the players. So I think you're just going to have to slowly build up, start making it into the top four, and then pulling an arm and a leg to do your absolute best to compete for the Scudetti. And obviously, I don't know if Inter's going to maintain this title run for 10 years or so, because
I doubt it.
Their players are going to get older, and they're still in financial troubles as it is. So, look, they may win it next year, they may not. At the end of the day, we're going to see what a proper sporting director is going to do in the summer transfer market, and then go from there. You got to take things step by step, one step at a time. You can't expect success by the next day. You can't expect it all in one day and then think that, yeah, we didn't win. Honestly, I'm surprised about this season how well we've actually played, despite of the February debacle. So you can't say much.
Which is true, right? And more so to add on to that, right? We'll see a full functioning summer of Giuntoli and how he'll operate. And I think the main thing that we also need to understand too, when we look at it from a hindsight perspective, is look at it took Inter roughly about 4 to 5 years of consistent Champions League funding to get to where they are currently, even though they're still broke, but they're able to maintain what they have. When Inter and Milan weren't in the Champions League, when they weren't consistently playing in Champions League football in their dark ages, they had Fabio Bornini as their main striker for Milan. They had just absolutely atrocious players, right? It's just catastrophically bad. So it takes, and that's why that Champions League funding is crucial, because for example, that 80 to 100 million that we lost this season pushed the rebuild back another year.
I mean, imagine what we would have had if we were in the Champions League. We would have had a lot more. Would have had more leverage to get more players, or just anybody. Not a world beater, but players that would be more competent. That's it. At the end of the day, and look at what happened to Milan in the summer transfer window when they sold Tonali and they got the Champions League funding, because they weren't going to get it if it wasn't for the FIGC pulling that shenanigan.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can argue and you can say that it's helped both of them, Inter and Milan, now that they're consistently placing in there. So with us, I just think it's with how we are, because we're starting to finally get out of the woods, as our CEO has said. We're, at the end of this season, all the financial issues are gone. And then after that, we'll be able to start kind of, fiddling around a little bit, because these last 3 years was essentially the balancing the book years, unfortunately, because we spent a shit ton of money on De Ligt. We spent a crap ton of money on Ronaldo, a crap ton of money on Aaron Ramsey, a crap ton of money on Rabiot. Whether or not it's deserved is a different conversation. There's a lot of money on Higuain, a lot of money on Douglas Costa, a lot of players that weren't playing for the club but still tour as well. So there was a lot of bad financial dealings that takes a little bit of time to recover, especially with the COVID issue. We didn't have, people in seats. Butts in seats hurts revenue. So we took a lot of financial losses, some critical financial losses that we're finally starting to get out of the way now and kind of getting out of it. So I really do think that folks just be patient, give it a little bit more time. I know it's frustrating. We need to win everything. We need to win every year. But that kind of goes to show how awesome our franchise is, right? Because we're able to demand that because we've done it before.
So before I head out, I wanted to add one last thing before.
Go ahead.
Imagine, put it in perspective. Imagine if last season, not the last transfer market that we got Timmy Weah, but the other transfer market prior to that in the summer, if we didn't make it in the Champions League, we wouldn't have gotten Bremer.
No.
That one thing to put into perspective. Now imagine if we would have won in the Champions League last summer, we might have gotten Fratesi.
Possibly.
We might have beaten them. If we would have won in the Champions League, we might have had a better shot at getting Fratesi because they were linked to us. A lot of players were linked to us, but we couldn't do anything because the leverage was bad due to the Champions League loss, A, and B, with the whole FIGC thing, and then like having to have a plea deal. So yeah, that also was another perspective to put in for people, how important it is to make it to the top four.
For sure, man. For sure.
Before I head out, because I have a couple customers I have to help my dad with.
I gotcha. Cook, good sir. Make your bread.
Yep. So take care, Dash. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, Jeff. Anytime.
Yep.
All right. So we'll kind of close now just because we've gone over an hour anyway. So we'll kind of read some comments here and then we'll shut her down and then we'll go for the watch along tomorrow. So Yusuf saying that's money that goes into your direct competitors, right? So like, for example, right, if you take a Champions League hiatus for 2 years to really build things up, and then you have a Lazio or you have a Roma or you have a Napoli or et cetera that's taking your spot in the Champions League, they're going to continue to get that funding while you're not. It's very, very difficult. Like, for example, if you're in a different league instead of Calcio, you can afford that, right? Where, hey, we can be bad for a couple of seasons. Let's build things up. Let's get some draft picks. Let's get some young prospects, and we'll eventually get up there. The issue is if you place poorly, you get poor revenue. And that's kind of the moral of the story. And I think Juve are so against, and look, this isn't me arguing that it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's just kind of me laying it out there for people to understand. Juve are not willing to take poor revenue for the next couple of seasons, especially for the last couple. So that's why there's a lot of slow movement, not really anything going. And you can thank Paratici for that. You can thank Agnelli for that because the way that they treated Beppe Morata was absolutely atrocious. Did Beppe Morata have incredible transfer mercados for Juve? You know, the verdict's out, right? Because you have Douglas Costa, Bernardeschi, you have some flops on there as well, right? But overall, it's a net positive for Juve. He wasn't an issue. I think he was very crucial into building what Juve wanted because Allegri and Beppe Morata both wanted rebuilds. Agnelli and Paratici were against the rebuilds. They didn't want to do a rebuild. They wanted to continue to maximize their window because after the 17-18 season, Juve's window essentially, I would say it was starting to close. Pjanic was losing steam. Our defenders were losing steam. And it was just Higuain and Dybala, really. Our midfield wasn't that great because you had Matuidi, you had Pjanic, and then you had Emre Can. And it was just kind of, says the Flash was a flop unsubbing right now. Yeah, he was good his first season. His second season, he was mediocre. And then the season with Pirlo, he got shipped. LG, yes, COVID was a very big negative push. So we will never see the fruits of the Agnelli Paratici project because of COVID. But, it's unfortunately, you have to look at it how it was now. And it wasn't the greatest project at this point, just based off of how things were going, even though it was unfortunate situations. But, it is what it is. Alrighty, guys. We'll wrap this up here. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll do the watch along. It'll just be me, myself, and I for the watch along. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. If you're new, hello, welcome. And again, obviously, there's always going to be a call-in show every Saturday evening. So big ups to Jeff for being able to spend some time and hop on with us. And on other notes, guys, we will be doing the watch-along for Napoli Juve. I think Dave's going to do some Formula One stuff throughout the week as well. And then we will have the tinfoil hat show as well. So we shall, and I'm not used to doing the graphics, which is funny. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for logging in. All shenanigans. You can watch and catch up with Dave on the Bahrain race with German Dave if you want to rewatch the watch along there. And we shall see you for the watch along tomorrow, guys. Later.